All right, well, thank you everybody for coming. Welcome to the annual Meet the Candidates Night. Thank you for taking your time out of the day to come down here and meet our candidates. So the next on the agenda is the explanation of the voting process. Some ballots were mailed today, the rest of the ballots will be mailed tomorrow. There are 3 candidates running for 2 seats. As the CCNR changes have not taken effect, we still have cumulative voting. So each home, and only a home. So I know sometimes we've had that where a husband wants to vote and the wife wants to vote, and you got to come together and vote as one. Each home has 2 votes. They can be cast all for one candidate, or you can be cast 1 vote for one candidate and 1 vote for another candidate. But you can't vote for more than 2. You can't have more than 2 votes. And you can't fractionalize the votes. So it's either 2 votes for 1 candidate or 1 vote for 2 candidates. And we'll have a video on the website again to kind of explain that once we're through with everything. Let's see, so the explanation for the format of the meeting, you have the agenda. If you don't, raise your hand and we'll get one to you. Each candidate is going to have a 5-minute opening statement. After that, I'll have in a second, there, it's in the back. I will soon have a hat filled with 6 questions. I'll pull out a question and we'll go down where Joe gets the first question, pull out another question, Jerry will get a question, pull out another question, Philip will get a question, and then we'll go back through that. After those questions are answered, each candidate will have 2 minutes to answer a final question that they were not asked before. And that's our meeting. So with that, we've got Joseph Barletta, Jerry Monahan, and Philip Westbrook. And Joe, you're first.
All right, I'm ready to go. Hi, I'm Joe Barletta, and I'm running for a position on the Board of Directors. My wife Sandy and I moved from a similar senior community into our beautiful Four Seasons community about 18 months ago. And we did this to be closer to our children. We have found that the folks here at Four Seasons are friendly, welcoming, and like us, thoroughly enjoy their amenities and their social life. I believe that the goals and objectives of the Board of Directors are to provide for the management of our community and for its amenities, and to ensure the financial and social well-being of our community. The Board of Directors application asked that I give my experience or reasons why I would make a good board member. So let me start doing that. I have a Master's of Science degree in Electrical Engineering and an MBA with a major in Finance. I worked as a program manager on many electronic defense and reconnaissance programs at companies like Lockheed, RCA Astro Electronics Division in Princeton, and in Lytton, and managed several programs that were well over $150 million back when that was real money. So in doing that, what I had to do is, of course, deal with a lot of different personalities. When you're managing a program like that, you're dealing with electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, logistics people, contracts people, finance people, and so you have to coordinate and work with them very closely to make sure that the job gets done. And again, those are skills that I would be bringing to this Board of Directors. After retiring, I was on the Board of Directors of a 965-home senior community in Sacramento, and for 9 years I did that, and the 9 years were with breaks, so I was off the board for a while, came back on again, total of 9 years. And I served in several positions, both as a director, as a vice president, and as president of that board. And again, as you would expect, working on a board, you have to deal with the community, committees, with management company, and again, all of that involves being able to coordinate with people, work with people, listen to people, and again, those are skills that, of course, we need here. I am finally, I would like to say that currently, while I'm here, I am currently as a co-chair on the Facilities Committee, and I host trivia once a month. So, in any community such as ours, the key ingredients for success are controlling finances, good quality of life and maintenance of community amenities, and the homeowner property values. I'm sure we're all concerned about that. These are the main tasks of our board or any board. In general, I believe we are in relatively good shape and will certainly aim to keep us moving in a positive direction. There are, however, several areas that could stand some revisiting. First, our reserves. We are well over 100% funded. And in many communities such as ours, they safely function at 75 to 80%. So unless I'm missing something, if we can keep our reserves at these lower levels, that'll keep our dues a little better under control. Second item, we currently have term limits on committees, but no term limits on the board. I think the situation is reversed, and that's something, again, that should be looked at. There are some very smart and capable people here at Four Seasons, and I believe that many more would become involved if given the opportunity. It's hard to beat an incumbent, so that's a good reason why one would want to keep, not keep board members on there forever. The third item involves transparency. I think we should have a little bit more transparency in our meetings. Some of the decisions, again, not many, most are not an issue, but some decisions are made and announced on board meetings with little community input or discussions as to how or why these decisions are reached. And again, that's something that we ought to be taking a look at. So if elected, I will do my best to promote a logical, common sense approach to resolve all issues that present themselves to our community. The goal is to always strive to do the most good for the majority while minimizing the inconvenience to the rest. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Jerry?
Hi, my name is Jerry Monahan, excuse me, and I've been a resident of Four Seasons now for 11 years. I'm married 54 years to my wife Frances, who's sitting in the front here, and I have 3 daughters and 3 grandchildren. Basically, past experience, I'm a retired Riverside Police Lieutenant, a watch commander, and I've been in the United States Air Force. So if there's any Marines out there, I know I wasn't in the service by being in the Air Force, but I did. I'm a veteran of the Air Force. I know, Navy too. Navy too. My experience: currently, I'm the Vice President of the Board of Directors. I've been on the Board of Directors for a little over 2 years right now, and starting with, we had an unfortunate circumstance several years ago when one of our board members, Jimmy Sandoval, passed away in a very tragic car accident. I came on the board at that time and then was elected for a 2-year term, which I'm serving right now, ending in April. Also my experience, I'm a liaison to the Safety Committee. I'm liaison to the former Breeze Editorial Board and Communication Committee. It's now called Communications Board. Formerly, I was involved with the Large Committee, which was involved in redoing a lot of Smitty's equipment. He had equipment that was breaking down fairly regularly, so we went in there, and along with the Facilities Committee, Finance Committee, the Large Committee, was able to get the equipment that he needed to make things work a little bit better. Also, I'm part of the Neighborhood Watch Steering Committee, and I'm a block captain. So I'm pretty active in a lot of the things I do. On safety, that's kind of I have a soft spot in my heart for that because of my police background, but also all of the things that we do here that, you know, we need to be safe. We need to, how we drive and how we walk around, especially in the evenings, all those things are important. So I'm anxious to stay with the Board of Directors and be part of the Safety Committee. I'm also a CERT-trained member of our community. There's probably 80 or 90 of us, and that's basically what that is a community emergency response team. So if we have an emergency here, I'm trained beyond my police experience to do certain things that would help us get by until a help arrived, usually several days later if it was a major earthquake or so. Some of the goals for the association, it's so important. I want to maintain the resort-style living that we have now. This is a beautiful community. When I first moved in here, I couldn't believe how it looked, and it has remained that way. We've got large trees, beautiful green belts. Our buildings are just wonderful, and I'm anxious to do what I can to make sure it stays that way. Since I've been on the board, I've been very accessible to the people that live here and that need to get a hold of me. I've gotten calls day and night, and people have come to my house, emailed, to let me know when there was a problem and asked me if I could be involved in it. And whenever I could, I've tried to get out and do some good. So my first priority is to the people here. I answer to the residents here, and hopefully the time that I've spent on the board so far, I have hopefully proved to the community that I'm worthy of returning for what would be probably my last 2 years of service here. Joe mentioned the term limits. We do have term limits for the committee. I favored that when I was first ran. And I've seen, we had some issues where we had some great committees. All of our volunteers worked very hard. And I think probably I would revisit the term limit on committees because there's so many committees that we have that require a certain amount of expertise, and particularly finance. I don't know, I seen Don Fant come in earlier, but his committee of finance was great, and now Barry Gianetti, he has a great finance committee, keeping our finances in tow. Basically, unlike Joe, I don't support the 75% reserve. We have 115% right now, and most of these seminars that I've attended since I've been on the board, the finance committee people that I've talked to have said very strongly we need to be over 100% to take care of any eventuality in case something goes bad. For instance, if the roofs go out and we need to come up with $400,000, we have area reserves. So say if we have a 10-year life expectancy and it's going to cost what we think is $400,000, $40,000 is going to it every year. Even after 10 years, the cost of everything has gone up. So that $400,000 may be $450,000. So we're already in the hole a little bit. If we only have 70 or 75% of reserve, we're already working with 1 foot in the hole. And I think it's problematic. Oh, I'm sorry. I thought you were calling me. How much goes into the reserve here? Out of our dues, $219, $37 goes into the reserve account. $182 goes to operational expenses. So if we took money out of the reserve account in order to, say, reduce the rate each month, I think we'd have a serious problem in no time. Because all our buildings, most of you have been here for quite a few years. I'm looking around the room. So things need to be repaired. Roofs, carpeting, we just redone the lodge. Those kind of things are reserved. So we budget that money in advance so we don't have any risk of going into the hole and not having the money and having the risk of doing a special assessment or something like that. So we don't ever want to see one of those things around here. So basically, fiscal control, responsibility. I work closely with the finance department. The finance committee, they do a great job doing what they do, and I support them. And as I mentioned already, improve the safety and security of the community through working with the police, working with the city of Beaumont, and working with all the other committees who work so hard trying to make this a good place to live. And most importantly, as we're coming to the transition, we've all heard about it. I was in a meeting recently with KHA, and they said that 60 houses remain unsold. That's it. So I want to have a smooth transition. So I appreciate your time, and thank you for listening.
Hello, everybody. I know a lot of you guys from different things, I think, so I feel a little more comfortable because I'm not I'm not a politician, I'm an engineer. I want to put that right up front, so I'll try to be as pleasant as possible and keep it from an engineer's point of view. 10 years ago, last month, Elizabeth and I took up residency here, Four Seasons, and I gotta tell you, when we drove through we were actually on our way to the Tamale Festival down in Indio. And she saw us, said, we gotta check this place out. I don't think we ever made it to the Tamale Festival, but we did buy a house. So, we've been here since February of last month, 10 years. And I gotta say, as a working stiff, coming through the gates every day was a great, just great dispense. And so, recently I did retire. But let me give you a little bit about what I've been doing to get me here from high school, if you will. First 8 years I was in the Navy. I enlisted in the Navy under the nuclear power program as a mechanical engineer. 10 years after that, I went into healthcare as a plant engineer, looking at facilities there where we did not only operations and all the fiscal things that go involved in that, but we actually did construction. I was involved in the construction oversight, the acceptance, which is a big deal here right now. After that, moved over to California State University, San Bernardino campus, which found a nice home there for 21 years. I did retire from there as the chief engineer and energy manager. While I was there, not only was I running the day-to-day operations, we expanded the campus from 600,000 square feet to 2.7 million square feet, all along being involved with the commissioning, acceptance, and all the fun things that go along with those construction issues. When I finally thought I was retired and I was here for a grand total of 3 months, somebody came and called and said they needed an engineer at University of Laverne, and if I would step in for a short while, which ended up to be for almost 4 years, doing the same thing, chief engineer, project manager, construction. So you get that running facilities, and basically doing what happens here. This is a campus as well. We don't have students running around, thank God. But you know, it's the process is the same. Currently, I am an independent consulting for ISIS. Now, you guys may want to think, why is he doing that for a terrorist group? But actually, ISIS stands for Intelligence Systems and Engineering Services. They're based out of Atlanta, Georgia. And so we go in and we do community facility assessments, mainly for higher education places. And we're looking at, do they have enough funding set aside for things? Are they getting their preventative maintenance done? Do they have a good cap renewal fund to replace things as they come up? And so I've been involved in this stuff basically all my life. When I did get here originally, I did step into the safety and facilities, and so you old-timer guys like this guy right here, because I worked with him. It was one committee way back when Adam was and Eve were still living here. And then it broke off. But basically, I was working at Cal State. It was getting hard to get in here and do all the things that, so I did have to back out of that one. And currently, as of today, if you guys went to the board meeting, you saw my name up there, I did get voted in on the community planning and transition, which is basically, that's my bread and butter right there. So that's where I am today. I have to say that way back when I was working for Admiral Rickover in the nuclear power program, they had a general philosophy of the big picture. And that has carried me through my career. The big picture is basically, whatever you do here, how does it affect everything around you? And I think that that philosophy carries through. These gentlemen here have a lot of experience in the board operations. I'll hand that to them. But sometimes some fresh eyes coming from the outside kind of helps stimulate things and see things a little differently. One of the things that I have to say is we don't need to reinvent the wheel to get things done. If you've ever gone into, one of the things is the safety here, and I know that once we get the contractor off the site and we control our egress and ingress outlets, we can start employing some reasonable security here. And if anybody here has had the pleasure of trying to break into Sun Lakes, they're pretty good over there. You know, and I'm thinking that's something that we can utilize over here. Another thing that I have to weigh in on, I see Eric standing up over there already, but Elizabeth and I lived in a community, an HOA community, that did believe in underfunded reserve accounts. And once you've experienced one of these things and where it can actually lead to, now for us, we were actually got off on the hook kind of lightly, whereas we did have a catastrophic event happen in our community. The reserve account wasn't funded enough to handle that and all the other things it needs to do. So all the homeowners were levied $3,000 hit. Now, some of you folks out there can say, $3,000, I can write the check and away we go. But there's other folks out there, not so fast. And I feel that as a board member, we have a fiduciary responsibility to all our neighbors, not just a few. And we need to guard out for these type of events. And I know that there is a couple folks here, I don't see their faces right now, that had a similar experience where they live too. So I want to say that I don't think what we experienced was an isolated event. It does, well, I can't at this point in time, with the turnover from Hovnanian coming into us, the unknowns, we have a lot of unknowns right now. I've been looking at this stuff. I am a facilities guy. I see things from a different light than maybe a lot of you folks do. That there are things there that we may or may not be ready to take on. Example would be this wonderful trail system we have behind us, the Nature Preserve. That'll be handed over to us at the end of this year. Now, right now, the builder's been taking care of that stuff. But there's a lot of, I see a lot of liability. If there's a firefighter out here, I know what he sees out there. He sees fuel, which means if one of our homeless guys over here catches a fire, it's going to race through this place like crazy. Now, who's going to pick up the pieces when that happens? I was out here when the big rains happened just a couple weeks ago. And it was amazing to see the river flowing bank to bank. Right away, as a facilities guys, I'm thinking, we're eroding away the banks. Who's going to pick up the pieces when that comes up? And then this is where your reserve account, again, is your nest egg. It's what's going to happen. We are a unique facility here, not unlike a lot of places, or not like a lot of places, that have these type of amenities here that can be a liability, and those liabilities really have not been defined yet. I've been sitting in on the CPT, I'm a member of it now, and these are issues that I want to have identified before the handoff goes. Not to mention, we do have the other, we're 14 years old, a lot of people you don't see. I know this from working on facilities all along. The air conditioning units, they live about 12 to 15 years in a commercial environment. We're going to start looking at those, pools, streets, on and on and on you go. So the big ticket items really haven't hit our wallet yet, but they will, I can guarantee, because I've seen it over and over again. That's what I do. And so I think that right now, at this time and place, my talents, which is something I've lived, this is what I do, it's almost a habit for me. This is where I need to be for right now, for us. Thank you.
All right, so now we'll go on to the questions for the candidates, which I'll pull out. Joe, which do you think is a better place to understand the workings of the HOA? Committee meetings or the open board meeting?
Well, since I said that the open board meetings really don't get into too much detail, obviously the committees are the better place to be. In the committee, there's all the various contractors that are reviewed, and the discussions take place and decisions are made in the committee, and then they take them forward to the board, and the board, of course, takes those inputs and makes its decisions. And in the board meetings, again, one of my comments, I do not see that much discussion that we can all, let's say, put in our own 2 cents in terms of what's happening, do we agree with what's going on. Again, to do that, you'd have to go to that particular item and sit in at a committee meeting. And if I just have 2 minutes left, my comment back to the discussion about the 100% funded. The numbers of 75 or 80%, these are not numbers that I made up. Up north, where I was in Sacramento, the reserve companies are the ones that said to us at 75 or 80%, you're in Fat City. All the other communities in the area up there all went along with the same thing. The place where you start getting into trouble is when you start dropping below 50%. And again, when you look at how it's done, when you do 100% funded, if you do have a problem in one area, it says every single item, and there's hundreds of items that are in the reserve funding. When you look at every single item, if one item, let's say, has a big problem and you now have to go in and get money because you've overshot that or because it happened before it really should have happened, you go get that money somewhere else, and then you start moving things around, and the reserve companies do that for you, and you work with them, the finance people work with them. So again, I'm not hard over saying, absolutely, we've got to change this. All I'm bringing this up as is this is something to think about. We all have problems with our dues. And again, when you look at the reserve funding, think of it going on at infinitum. Every single item in these hundreds of items that are in the reserve funding, they're all over 100%. And someday, you're going to have a lot of money flopped over, and so you've been collecting dues all that time. But again, this is not something I'm hard over on, and something that we should be discussing. And with all of these items that I brought up, I'm not saying we absolutely must do these things. These are things to consider, things that should be discussed. And that's really where I'm coming from. Let's discuss them and bring the community into all these discussions.
There we go. All right. Thank you, Joe. Next question is for Jerry Monahan. And it is, what percent do you feel that our reserves should be funded and why? I don't make
Let me respond to that. I believe very strongly that our reserve funding right now is in a very good place. I don't know where Joe lived, and maybe he was very lucky over the years, and they didn't have any real issues. But we have so many things here. We have about $18 million worth of property here. You know, buildings, the roads, the landscape, all of those things. Anything could happen to any of these buildings at any time. And I believe very strongly we need to be at 115% or so. It comes from our finance people. We have our reserve people. We have a reserve study done every year. We know where we have to be, and we know where we're comfortable at being. I've lived here 11 years. I've had one increase in my dues. It was for $9. We have been to, many of the board members have been to seminars where people have said, you should be raising your dues 9% per year. And we said no. We have a great finance committee in place. We're very frugal as how we approach things, and I would never want to see that kind of raise. Our 9% raise, we went from 210 to 219. And that, even that, nobody wants to see anybody's monthly assessment go up. But the bottom line is, sometimes it has to be, we have a fiduciary responsibility to make sure that this place operates smoothly and stays the way it is. We all enjoy the amenities that we have here, and the only way I see it is to maintain the level at about 115%. Thank you.
Thank you, Gary. Philip, do you think our dues should be tied to the California annual cost of living increases?
If we did that, everything would cost a lot. No. I mean, it sounds like we were all talking about it. What I want to say is, and you know that You guys know, I'm sure he doesn't know, but she kind of knows because she just walked in late, so, but she knows all about me anyway. But, sorry, Shirley. That's what we do at ISIS, is that we do facility assessments. We look at their funding. Are you set? Can you take a major hit if it happens? Can you maintain your facilities so that it operates efficiently? And all you gotta do is look out the window out here now. When I see plastic tarps on our roofs and we're 14 years old, I got a problem with that. You know, and when I drive in the front gate and you gotta walk over the boulders that are moving around underneath your feet because in my opinion, the builder didn't install them correctly, which is a whole different ballgame right there. So these things that we look at right now, our funding has been set up to where it's the metrics that are used take into account inflation. Like when I give you a dollar amount to replace your air conditioner that you just bought in your brand new house, I'm not giving you the price of what it costs today. I'm giving you the price of what it's going to cost when you replace that thing 12 years from now. So that's already built into our budget. So to tie our dues based on that alone would be wrong. Now I realize that, especially this year, if you've been a facilities guy, you know that I had to redo a bunch of contracts because the custodians, by virtue of the living wage in California, pushed all their salaries up. We got to cover that. So in that instance, you have to look at your operational side. Do you have enough there to cover that? Because that's the law at that point. But if we are operating correctly and we have our manning levels are proper, we're not overloaded with a bunch of dead wood, then we may have to look at that. But to tie it to just a arbitrary number every time, I don't agree with. So,
To Joe. And the question is, over the past several years, the board has developed several forms of communication to include the daily report, a modernized website, committee chair meetings, and Meet with John. All are open or available to all residents. What other new forms of communication do you think we need?
Actually, from what I've seen here, we're doing pretty well. I cannot imagine what new forms of communication we would need. It's pretty extensive. People do get the word. We get it every day. And I think as far as that capacity in communicating with the community, I think we're doing well. The only issue, and again, I bring up the board meetings, the only issue I have is there ought to be more communications with specific items that are voted on with the people that attend the board meetings. And from what I've seen in the time that I've been here, many people have been very frustrated sitting in several of the board meetings when certain items have come up, and they go, what happened? How did that happen? Where did this come from? What's the basis of this? So that discussion at the board meetings, and again, I've seen it start to get a little bit better, but those discussions at board meetings is a form of communications that I think is really the only place that I see where we could improve. We have a very elaborate system of communications, and I think in that regard we're doing very well.
Thank you, Joe. Jerry, what concerns do you have about the turnover of the HOA by the builder later this year?
Well, the eventual turnover, the concerns are many. One, most of you drive around Four Seasons Drive, you see we have cracks in the roadway, and those kind of things need to be addressed. If it's the builder's responsibility, we need to have him look into it and take care of it. We recently had a little sinkhole, I wouldn't call it a sinkhole, but down by the windmill bridge, and it was a sink dip. Yeah, thank you. My engineer buddy here. we had a sink dip, and those kind of things worry me. The thing that he touched on earlier, the conservancy, that's one that we're working on a regular basis. Having it turned over to us, we assume the responsibility for it, and also the financial responsibility for the repairs and maintenance of it, without any real control on what we want to see in it or out of it. For instance, if we want to do anything in the conservancy, you can hold your breath, turn blue, and pass out, because we don't have any control over it. The Army Corps of Engineers and the IERCD, they are involved in that kind of stuff. We have to get a mother may I if we need to remove a falling tree or something like that. That's an issue. We need to get that lined up as well. Also, we want to take a look at our buildings that are still under warranty to make sure we don't have any ongoing problems. Guys like Phil and Bill over here who have that kind of construction background will be instrumental in how we proceed during the build-out. Because the last thing I want to see is KHAV hit the bricks at the end of the year and leave us holding a bag with a lot of problems in it. And it's not going to happen. Between the CP&T group and the board, who has worked pretty hard with First Service and the builder, I think we'll be in pretty good shape. But it won't be because we haven't done anything. It's because we're on top of it and are working diligently in your behalf. So it's very important, and we'll do the best we can for you.
Thank you, Jerry.
See if you're going to rustle around.
Yes, no, I don't need to do that now, that's the only one in there. Question is, are you willing to be the board president?
Am I wanting to be, what, are they going to shoot Lynn? Or? If the need be, yes. But first of all, what I want to say, I got to say this. Being a facilities guy for 44 plus years, and have held a lot of positions, chief engineer, all kinds of fun things. And Eric, my hat's off to you and your troops, the board, all you committee guys that are out there. Because nobody ever calls you up, right, Bruce? Tell me if this is true. And says, you know what? Everything here looks so just doggone great. Thank you so much. And I never got that, you know, in the Cal State Assembly, everyone's like, hey, Phil, you know, the air conditioning worked great today. Thank you very much. But they will call you when it's not working right, or something is leaking, or something is this or that or that. So you guys and the board members, you know, it's a thankless job. And I want to say thank you from my heart, because I've been there and done that. And if I needed to be the president of the board, I would give it my best effort. Truly I would, because I live here too. Thank you.
So now each candidate can have 2 more minutes to answer a question that you were not asked. Joe, we'll start with you.
I always get to start. All right, good. A couple of comments first related to the reserves again. Just so everybody's aware, when we put money into reserves, we invest that money. That money goes into bonds and various other investment abilities. And the money that we get from that should be enough to cover, at least typically that's what happens, that should be enough to cover the inflation that we have in the community. As far as what Philip said, as far as relating California cost of living to our dues, you don't want to tie it directly to that, but you're going to be hit with it one way or the other. If the inflation goes up and California starts going up in inflation, as we expect that it will, it's going to be hitting the expenses in the community, and when you hit the expenses in the community, they have no choice other than to raise the dues. So we should expect that. As far as the builder leaving, a couple of comments with that. I think yesterday we had a meeting in facilities, and then in that facilities meeting, a very interesting thing came up, which had to do with the roof leaking in the in the lodge. And we had the man come in that worked on those leaks, and so we grilled him on that. And he said, well, the problem that we have with this building, and I'm going to scare the hell out of everybody, problem we have with this building, when they put the roof tiles on, they have an overlap. And the overlap is, from what he saw, is not sufficient, is not enough. In other words, when you put the tiles on, they should overlap a certain amount to save the number of roof tiles. He did not have the same overlap. So what happens is the water gets in there because there isn't enough overlap, and that's what's been causing our leaks. So if this is the case with the builder, before that builder leaves, we better hit him hard on making sure that he either pays it all or at least a significant part of these things. And it makes you think also about our homes. If he was now trying to save money on the roof in our homes by saving the tiles and putting them further apart, how are our roofs going to hang on? So that's something that we ought to be addressing with the builder before he leaves, because once he's gone, he's done. Thank you.
Thank you, Joe. Jerry?
Probably one of the things I would have liked to see asked was, a lot of times the board meetings, the open ones, don't cover a lot of information, mainly things that occur at the executive sessions. And the reason that happens is because a lot of times in the executive session we're dealing with contracts on an annual basis. We're reviewing and approving them, looking at financial information. We're dealing with liens, judgments. We're involved with our attorneys, working on the betterment of the community. And a lot of times we deal with contracts. We get the facilities committee, which Joe's part of. They'll get people that do bids on projects. It then goes to finance. Finance takes a look at it, and it's a reserved item. They indicate that if it's going to be a capital expense, then we know that too. And the picking a person, a contractor A, B, or C, a lot of times we go pick because it's the best rate. We have a prior working relationship with them. They've always done good work, and a number of other issues. A lot of that information is not discussed in the open board meeting, and that's because by the time we get it, it's been through committees like facilities, finance, safety in the event if it's a safety issue, and then again finance. So by the time we get it, we get a pretty good scrubbed down version of what we need to do. So as far as the open information at the board meetings, we try to be as open as possible. If you have any issues that you you would like to ask about, I would say contact the board member, or you have 3 minutes to speak at the beginning. We don't engage back and forth during that time because it just delays the meetings. So it's not that we don't want to talk. Sometimes we do. Today we had some issues with the F exhibit and the putting green, and we had to ask a lot of questions on one of those issues. So we do open it up, and we'll ask questions, and people ask questions of us. But ordinarily, a lot of the things that we do has been confidential on contracts, and you just know that it's been through many hands before we get it. Thank you.
Thank you, Jerry. Phil?
Thanks, Eric. Regarding construction issues, which that's what I've been doing for a long time. Once the builder leaves, maybe not, because errors and omissions, there is no timeline. And if you find a structural issue or whatever that was not built according to either code or plan, there is no timeline. And we do have, if you know, you have the ability and recourse to the builder, either via his bond or other vehicles. So you get the work done, you give him the opportunity to say, get out here and fix it, or I'll get someone to fix it, and you get the bill. You can hardline these guys, but it is a vehicle that we have. A lot of people don't want to go that route. I've done it myself. it takes a little wherewithal, but you can get it done. So just because Hovnanian packs up his trailers and we see the taillights, doesn't mean we're not done with it. That being said, what's happening right now with the transition just a few months away, our buildings are now starting to show their age. The talents that I have to offer, and the wherewithal, and the gumption, and a great wife that pushes me to the limit, makes it a difference. I think this is the time that I can serve my community best. Thank you.
Thank you very much. There will be time after the meeting where the candidates can go, and we've got separate rooms, and you can ask questions of them individually. As a reminder, the ballots were mailed starting today. The rest will be in the mail tomorrow. The district meeting to count the ballots is back in that room back there, in room number 3. Starts on April 16th at 9 a.m. It will continue on April 17th at 9 a.m. Because there's 1,700 ballots to go through. If we get them all back, and that's quite a few to go through in one day. The actual annual meeting and announcement of the winners of the election will be on April 18th, a Thursday at 1 p.m. in the ballroom. Thank you, everybody, for coming.